Welcome everyone to my Miyabi guide. The long-awaited Miyabi, the first Void Hunter to be playable in Zenless Zone Zero, is set to be released soon. In this guide, I will go over her kit, explain what she does, then cover her playstyle, drive disc sets, main and substats, W engine options, team comps, and finally, Miyabi's Mindscapes. Keep in mind that Miyabi is not yet released, and there may be some changes when she's out. I did not play Miyabi, and therefore, there may be some things I cannot confidently answer, such as her best attack combos. And without further ado, let's go over her kit. Miyabi is an S-rank Anomaly agent, who has a special attribute type of Frost. Frost is essentially the same as the Ice attribute, as it shares the same damage bonus effects, resistance, and even attribute Anomaly build-up resistance. The difference comes in the attribute Anomaly, as Frost has its own attribute Anomaly build-up gauge, which can only be built up by dealing Frost damage. Since the Frost attribute Anomaly can only be built up with Frost characters, it can also trigger disorder effects with the normal Ice attribute Anomaly. The Frost attribute Anomaly triggers a special version of the Ice attribute Anomaly's Freeze, Frostbite, and Shatter effect. The special effects of the Frost attribute Anomaly are explained in Miyabi's core skill. When Miyabi deals Frost damage to an enemy, the enemy will become inflicted with Ice Fire, increasing Miyabi's Frost attribute Anomaly build-up rate by 100% of her crit rate, for a maximum build-up rate increase of 80%. When the Frost attribute Anomaly build-up gauge is full, Miyabi will freeze the enemy and trigger Frostbite, which increases crit damage dealt by 10% for 10 seconds. When Frostbite is triggered, Ice Fire will be removed from the current target, triggering Frostburn Break and dealing 1,500% of Miyabi's attack as frost damage, causing the target to enter the Frostburn state, and also granting Miyabi a stack of Fallen Frost, which I'll explain later. During this state, all squad members' Anomaly build-up rates will be increased by 20%, and Miyabi will not be able to apply Ice Fire to the same target again, which greatly decreases her Frost attribute Anomaly build-up rate. To remove the Frostburn state from enemies, you would either have to wait for 10 seconds or trigger a disorder through another attribute Anomaly. Fallen Frost is a stack that can be obtained by either triggering Frostburn Break onto an enemy, triggering a disorder, or using Miyabi's ultimate or X special. When you enter battle, Miyabi immediately gains 3 stacks, and up to 6 stacks can be obtained. When Miyabi has at least 2 stacks, you can hold her basic or special to charge an attack that deals massive frost damage and attribute Anomaly buildup. This enhanced basic attack can be charged 3 times, with each charge consuming 2 stacks of Fallen Frost. This attack scales with Miyabi's basic attack. Using Miyabi's regular basic attack will deal up to 5 hits, with the first 2 dealing physical damage and the last 3 dealing frost damage. Miyabi's special attack will deal frost damage. If you have 40 energy, Miyabi's X special can be used, dealing increased frost damage and granting 2 stacks of Fallen Frost. If you have enough energy, you can use Miyabi's X special again to deal a follow-up attack dealing more frost damage and granting 2 more stacks of Fallen Frost. Miyabi's dodge and assist are pretty normal, as she can deal frost damage when using her basic attack after a perfect dodge and deal frost damage through her quick assist. Her chain attack also deals frost damage, and her ultimate will deal even more frost damage. After using Miyabi's ultimate, she gains 3 stacks of Fallen Frost, and her ice damage will be increased by 30% for 12 seconds, which also covers frost damage. Miyabi's faction bonus can be triggered by having a character from the same faction or a support character, increasing the damage of her Fallen Frost enhanced basic attack by 60%. Additionally, when a disorder is triggered, Miyabi gains 2 stacks of Fallen Frost, and the next enhanced basic attack will ignore 30% of enemies' ice resistance. And lastly, Miyabi's core skill enhancement bonus will increase Anomaly proficiency and attack. Miyabi is a rather unique Anomaly character, who, unlike other Anomaly characters, scales on crit and attack like an attack character. The damage Miyabi deals through Frostburn Break uses the normal damage formula, meaning that it scales on crit instead of Anomaly proficiency like other attribute anomalies. Because of that, Anomaly proficiency isn't the best stat for her personal damage, although it isn't a complete waste, specifically for her disorder damage. Since Miyabi is an Anomaly character who isn't built like other Anomaly characters, this introduces a problem with her build options, especially with W engines, as stats like crit aren't typically used on Anomaly characters. Crit rate is especially important for Miyabi as it increases her Frost attribute Anomaly buildup. Reaching 80% crit rate would allow Miyabi to reach the maximum buildup rate increase from her core skill. Buildup rate can also be increased by Anomaly Mastery, which is a stat Miyabi would most likely need, unless you are in specific scenarios where the extra buildup rate is not necessary. Going back to Miyabi's core skill, when she deals frost damage to an enemy, she will apply Ice Fire to that enemy. Miyabi's Frost attribute Anomaly buildup rate increase will only affect enemies affected by Ice Fire. However, when the Frost attribute Anomaly gauge reaches its maximum, and Frostbite, and in turn Frostburn Break, is triggered, Ice Fire will be removed from the current enemy. This is why you would want to play Miyabi with another Anomaly character to trigger disorders, which would allow Miyabi to reapply Ice Fire onto enemies. And if you have Miyabi's faction bonus, you would gain 3 stacks of Fallen Frost after triggering a disorder, which would allow you to use Miyabi's enhanced basic attack more often. This enhanced basic attack deals a lot of damage and attribute Anomaly buildup. Triggering a disorder with Frost can be done with any other attribute, including Ice. Having Anomaly units like Burnice or Piper would make this much easier. Since the goal here is to trigger a disorder, Yanagi will easily be one of the better characters to pair with Miyabi, as Yanagi can very easily trigger disorders. Moving on to Miyabi's Drive Disc set options. Her best 4-piece set will be the upcoming Branch and Blade Song Drive Disc set. This set is made for Miyabi. The 2-piece bonus will increase crit damage by 16%, and if the equipping character's Anomaly Mastery is 115 or greater, which is always the case with Miyabi, the 4-piece bonus will increase crit damage by 30%. Additionally, if Freeze or Shatter is triggered, crit rate will be increased by 12% for 15 seconds. This set grants Miyabi some crit rate and a lot of crit damage, which complements her need for crit rate. However, Miyabi would still need a lot of crit rate, and that is why I would recommend going for a 2-piece Woodpecker Electro for the bonus 8% crit rate. However, if you already have 80% crit rate, you could definitely go for a 2-piece Polar Metal for the ice damage bonus, or a 2-piece Hormone Punk for the bonus attack. Miyabi already gains a lot of ice damage bonuses through her ultimate and W engine, which can make ice damage bonus perform slightly worse than attack, especially if you aren't using any attack buffing characters like Caesar or Sukaku. However, if you do have attack buffing characters in your squad, ice damage should perform marginally better than attack for your 2-piece set. Between going for 2-piece Woodpecker Electro, Polar Metal, or Hormone Punk, the difference is very marginal and should instead be decided based on substats. Aside from using the 4-piece Branch and Blade Song, 4-piece Woodpecker and 4-piece Polar Metal are also viable options, with the choice of using a 2-piece Branch and Blade Song, Hormone Punk, or either Woodpecker Electro or Polar Metal for your 2-piece option. The difference between these combos is negligible, and you should choose based on substats. As for main stats, for your Disc 4, you would want to go for crit rate to reach the 80% crit rate target for Miyabi's Frost attribute Anomaly buildup increase. For your Disc 5, you could go with either ice damage or attack, with ice damage having a slight advantage if you're using Miyabi with attack buffers. Although the difference is marginal, you should decide based on substats. Pen ratio can also be considered if you're using Arena. As for your Disc 6, most of the time, Anomaly Mastery would be the best option to increase Miyabi's Frost attribute Anomaly buildup. Attack can be a viable option though if you have Anomaly buildup buffs. As for substats, you would want to prioritize crit rate for the 80% crit rate target, then attack and crit damage. If you're running the Branch and Blade Song Drive Disc set and using Miyabi's signature W engine, you would already have a lot of crit and not so much attack, so giving attack a slightly higher priority would benefit Miyabi's damage. Pen and Anomaly proficiency are also nice to have, although they shouldn't be the focus. Moving on to W engine options, Miyabi's limited W engine options become pretty apparent. Regarding this W engine ranking, keep in mind that depending on the rotation, the exact enemy you're facing, and teammates, the ranking may slightly differ, and this ranking may not hold true in all situations. Miyabi's signature, Hailstorm Shrine, is the only Anomaly W engine with crit as its substat. Because of that, the damage gap between her signature and all other options is large. Miyabi's signature W engine, Hailstorm Shrine, has a base attack of 743 and increases crit rate by 24%. As for its effect, the crit damage of ice attacks is increased by 50%. When the character equipping this W engine uses their X special, or any squad member triggers an attribute anomaly, ice damage will be increased by 20% for 15 seconds, stacking twice. This W engine is quite honestly one of the more powerful W engines in the game, very obviously meant to encourage players to pull for it, as all the other options aren't great. While this is a great option and better value than getting Miyabi's M1, I don't want to encourage anyone to pull for this W engine, and while the gap does appear big, Miyabi is still dealing a lot of damage with other 4-star options, and pulling for her signature W engine is not a must. Aside from Miyabi's signature W engine, you could go for the 5-star Fusion Compiler, which is obtainable from the Signal Shop. Fusion Compiler increases pen ratio and attack, making it a decent option. Burnice's signature can also work, although it's a lot more conditional than Fusion Compiler. Weeping Gemini and the Battle Pass Electro Lip Gloss are decent 4-star options, as both increase attack and anomaly proficiency. Although do keep in mind that Electro Lip Gloss requires an enemy to become inflicted with an attribute anomaly for its effect to trigger, which can make it perform slightly worse when you're clearing content in a lower number of rotations, or against bosses, where triggering an attribute anomaly can take slightly more time. Roaring Rides is another decent option, as it has high base attack and increases attack through its substat, although its effect requires an X special to hit an enemy, where it then gives a random buff. This randomness makes it perform slightly worse in comparison to Electro Lip Gloss and Weeping Gemini. If you're struggling with crit rate, you also have the option to run an attack W engine. Using a W engine with a different type than your character will not grant your character its effect, although your character will still get the base attack and substat. In the case of Miyabi, using a W engine just for its crit rate, like Steel Cushion, which is also obtainable from the Signal Shop, can be a decent and viable option. When it comes to teams, Miyabi wants to be played with another anomaly unit, alongside a support, a stunner, another anomaly, or a unit that can buff Miyabi's damage. Miyabi's faction bonus is important to her damage, and because of that, you would always want to have a character from the same faction or a support character. Yanagi is probably going to be the best option as the second anomaly unit due to her ability to trigger disorders quickly. Although you could also use other anomaly units such as Burnice or a 4-star like Piper. Burnice can be played off-field giving Miyabi more on-field time, while Piper is a decent 4-star alternative who can trigger anomalies without requiring a lot of on-field time. You could also run Jane Doe as your Anomaly unit, but Jane will have to take some on-field time. Grace could also work fine as your second Anomaly unit. In a team with Yanagi, you could run Caesar to buff both Miyabi and Yanagi's attack. Aside from Caesar, you could also run Sukaku or Lycon, who can both use the Freedom Blues set to reduce enemies' attribute Anomaly build-up resistance. Lucy, Rena, or Nicole are also decent options. You could also go with Triple Anomaly, although I can't really say how well this team will perform. With Anomaly units aside from Yanagi, like Burnice or Piper, Miyabi loses her faction bonus, and you would need to run either a support or again, a unit from the same faction like Sukaku, who coincidentally is also a support. With Burnice or Piper, you could use Sukaku as your support, or use Lucy, Rena, or Nicole. As for your Bangbu, you could use the Ice Bangbu, Shark Bu, or with Yanagi, you could also use the upcoming Section 6 Bangbu, Agent Gulliver. And lastly, Miyabi's Mindscapes. Miyabi's first Mindscape will make every stack of Fallen Frost consumed. When using her enhanced basic attack, ignore 6% of the target's defense, stacking up to 6 times, which is the maximum number of Fallen Frost stacks. Additionally, when hitting an enemy in the Frostburn state with a level 3 charged enhanced basic attack, the Frostburn state will be removed from the target, and all squad members will retain the same 20% attribute Anomaly build-up increase for 10 seconds. This Mindscape is a decent damage buff, and while it allows you to remove the Frostburn state by using an enhanced basic attack, you would still want to trigger Disorders to gain Fallen Frost stacks in the first place to use her enhanced basic attack. While this is a decent first Mindscape, I'd highly recommend going for her signature instead. M2 increases the damage of Miyabi's basic attack and dodge counters and grants an additional stack of Fallen Frost when Miyabi's 5th basic attack hits an enemy. Additionally, this Mindscape will grant Miyabi 6 stacks of Fallen Frost instead of 3 when entering battle, and also increases her crit rate by 15%. The crit rate increase will make reaching 80% crit rate on Miyabi easier. M3 and M5 are both skill level increases. M4 increases the damage of Frostburn Break and grants additional decibels. And lastly, Miyabi's 6th Mindscape will grant her the Impulse effect when using her enhanced basic attack, increasing the damage of the enhanced basic attack by 30%. After gaining the Impulse effect, Miyabi will spontaneously launch an attack when Fallen Frost stacks are consumed. This bonus attack grants Miyabi a much larger AoE, and also increases her enhanced basic attack's damage. Overall, Miyabi has decent Mindscapes, especially her first 2, although none of them are necessary. I would recommend going for her signature first, instead of Mindscapes. And that's all from this guide. Miyabi's kit looks very different from when she was first introduced, and I'm looking forward to playing her when she's out. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.